Happy Thursday, everybody. Hi, Linda. Hope you're doing well.
Hey, everybody. Hi, Linda.
In the event
Happy Thursday.
It is Thursday, and in the event that you are joining us and you've not yet sounded off, welcome to you nameless friends who are joining us for the live stream today. It is good to be together on the last day of Bible study for the week.
Yes.
It is not the last day of the week, but it is the last day of the Bible study.
Or the last day of Bible study, but it is the last day of Bible study
for the week. Yeah, all of those words in sequence do matter.
Yeah, you need all of them together.
That said, it's a gorgeous day. It's a beautiful day. And I'm not talking about the weather.
Oh, is it a...
It's a beautiful day. It's a spectacular day. It is a victorious day.
I'm checking the date. Is there something I should know?
There is. There is something you should know. There's something I'm going to share.
Is this a... Okay.
I'm waiting for it. Can you guess? You should be able to guess. I expect that under normal circumstances, you would be able to guess.
So this will have something to do with technology?
Yep.
Is it a conference of some sort, an unveiling of somebody's new products?
That I would have already spilled. They are literally pulling the fiber tubing down my alley today. Right now, as we speak, the crew sent by the divines have come to lay the framework for the new infrastructure that will one day result in fiber internet to my house.
New day.
This is a new day.
Oh.
You don't know. They were there cutting across the alley so that they could lay wire right to the spot. And I just thought to myself,
were you helping them?
You are doing God's work.
Did you take a shovel out and offer to help?
I did take pictures. I tried to not be like totally noticeable, but I was like, so yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. This will be pretty telling for local folks, but I don't know what's more awesome. How excited you are for the new thing, or how much of that excitement is based in leaving the old company, the old internet company, and shaking the dust off your feet, so to speak, and moving on to the new. It's fiber optic, but it's not coming to my neighborhood yet?
Well, so I don't think I told you this story. This will make you laugh.
Did you you got them to my house yet?
Not there. So I was...
You're going to be the best thing that's ever happened to this company. You're going to literally be their number one salesperson.
I will be their number one unpaid salesperson. No, so I was coming...
In fairness, you also don't know if they're any good. You just know they're not the company you have now.
That is the same thing. That is, I mean, yes.
I don't know that they're actually better.
But I do know they're not. Let's see, that knowledge is equal and opposite so drastically that, no, seriously, I could have...
Oh, remind me, keep going.
Okay, so I was coming home a couple days ago when they were doing the last scouting, where they mark the ground. What's that called? There's a name for it when they're...
Yeah, locating.
Locating, thank you. So they were finishing the locating, and there was a guy from the company, the new internet company, was sitting there, and he was talking with my neighbor. So I pull up on my scooter, and if you all haven't seen, I have a very adult-looking electric scooter.
Less Vespa,
and that's sarcasm, by the way.
Less Vespa and more retirement community.
No, it looks maybe less cool than that. I mean, I don't know what that level is. It's kind of like...
Guy riding it through the grocery store.
11-year-old got this for Christmas, but I love it, okay? I love it. It's an electric scooter, gets me around town.
I should snap a picture of you riding into church some morning, and then we'll post it.
The local post woman tells me she thinks I'm, and I quote, cute on it. So you take that to mean whatever you want.
Yeah, well...
but regardless, so I pull up on my scooter, decked out in my scooter wear, and so here's this company guy. And I go, hey, what's the progress? Can you guys tell me? And very clearly, my enthusiasm surprised him. He was like maybe not accustomed to potential customers being all that enthusiastic. So I was like, sorry, I just live right here. I'm so excited you guys are coming to town. Can you give me any information? He said, well, next couple
days. He's just a guy digging a hole in the dirt.
And to make sure they don't hit gas lines while they go. Yeah. So I'm just, so excited to talk to him. And I told him, so what's the deal? And he says, well, things have gone a little slower. We brought in a new crew, so we're bringing in the main trunk, and the hope is that'll get done in the next couple days. And newsflash, a couple days later they're getting it done, so that's exciting. But I said, so what's the timeline you think that they're running it from the trunk that they're putting down the alley into the house? And he said, well, I can't make you any promises. And I said, I completely understand that. He said, I'm not making any promises, but he said, it's going to be a few months. Oh. And then I think he saw like...
Your crest.
I was completely heartbroken. It was like, wait, you told me you canceled Christmas? Come on, dude. And he said, so I was like, well, a few months? Like, are we talking like before winter? And he said, well, if things go well, maybe.
That doesn't bode well.
So I may be very sad come October. We'll see. But I'm hopeful. It may still happen. And if it happens, I will rejoice. It will be National Michael Gets New Internet Day.
You would think the fact that they're putting something in the ground would almost certainly mean it will happen.
Eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if not, I'll dig to it. I mean, like, if I need to just lay the fiber to the rest of my house, if they connect the trunk, we're all good. Well, I'll figure it out.
And again, I want to point out for those listening, you have internet. You have service.
I have a thing that is called internet, allegedly.
This is not a new service to an previously unserviced location.
It might as well be, but continue. I will not concede that point.
By the way, they're hosting us. Let's not get them too riled up.
And by the way, let's not forget the people who drop our internet connection. No, there is something philosophically wrong with an internet company.
Here we go, friends. Hang on. Buckle up.
There's something philosophically wrong with an internet company that puts a data cap on your internet. Now, if you want to talk about slowing down the internet for abusers, if you want to talk about... But the same company, I'm almost done, the same company who bragged during the 2020 shutdown and said that they lifted all data caps and that their network was resilient enough for the end user with everyone at home using the internet to have the internet with no hiccups, to then come back and say that we all should pay for data overages on data caps. That is unethical. It's philosophically wrong-headed, and we're moving on, Spirit Lake.
I just thought of a new YouTube.
All right, I'm done. I'm sorry.
I just thought of a new YouTube channel.
What's that?
You get two people together, and then you put out a topic which one of them is deeply passionate about and the other one could not care less about, and you just let it go for a while.
Well, we do. We have that channel. This just went on.
This is the pilot.
Yeah. Okay, that's my soapbox. I'm off of the soapbox.
I do like having internet.
Just so that you're all aware, to put this in layman's terms, if the new company delivers what they say they're going to deliver, it will be a 70% increase in quality for less money.
And we do
70% better for less money.
We do live in a sort of unintentional monopoly. Well, maybe not that unintentional.
It depends on who's the intention.
But there are very few choices in regard to service. So competition will be welcomed in the Guecki household.
I already have the speech written when I call the customer retention department. I already know what I'm going to say. When they ask me, could we lower your rate? I will say, yes, you could have 2 years ago when you raised it without asking me and expected me to call this number to beg and plead with you like a plebeian for you to lower my rate. You could have done that and had good customer service the whole time, and I'd still be with you. And if I can work in plebeian, I absolutely will.
And, by the way, I'm taking as many people with me as possible.
Yeah, no, you don't know the number of people I've been keeping up to date on the rollout in Spirit Lake.
I so hope it coincides with the political season, because I celebrate the idea that I'm driving down your block and it's political sign, political sign, political sign, internet company, switch your internet company sign, political sign.
That's not a joke.
Sign.
I have the sign in my garage. I have displayed it, and I'm holding it for political season. I have it. It's in my garage.
With the name of this company?
Yep.
How is it you have that?
They gave me a sign. So when people are putting things in their yards, that is going out there.
We will get a picture of that. This is epic.
Glad that you're here. Hope you have a wonderful weekend, everybody. We'll see you after the break.
Hey, friends. Thanks for closing out the week with us. Welcome back. If you're joining us again today, we thank you for being patient with us. Yesterday, a pre-recorded session. I was out of town for part of the day. Just a thanks to you all for tuning back in. As we continue through Luke today, we're in the 9th chapter. A very familiar story, one of the few stories that is accounted for in all of the Gospels, and one that I think is, again, it's beloved, it's well-known, it's kind of visual. I think probably anybody who's done a little bit of Sunday school or church is going to be familiar with this story from Jesus' life, but I'll read it for you, and then we'll talk about it. On the return, the apostles told Jesus all they had done. He took them with him and withdrew privately to a city called Bethsaida. When the crowds found out, they followed him, and he welcomed them and spoke to them about the kingdom of God, and he healed those who needed to be cured. The day was drawing to a close, and the 12 came to him and said, "Send the crowd away, so that they might go to the surrounding villages and countrysides to lodge and get provisions, for we're here in a deserted place." And he said to them, "You give them something to eat." They said, "We have no more than 5 loaves and 2 fish, unless we go and buy food for all these people." For there were about 5,000 men. And he said to his disciples, "Make them sit down in groups of about 50. They did so, and had them all sit down, and taking 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven, and blessed and broke them, and gave them to the disciples to set before the crowd. And all ate and were filled. What was left over was gathered up, 12 baskets of broken pieces. So this is a miracle of abundance. It's a miracle of multiplication. There's so many wonderful themes in this story, Michael. The idea of enough, the idea of scarcity versus abundance, the sort of preview of he took bread and blessed it and broke it and take it and gave it to them. You know, that's almost taken verbatim later on in the gospel when we get to the Last Supper. We get a restatement of that. It's almost liturgical how closely Luke sticks to that idea and to that phrase. The idea of some doubt, the idea of the return, the idea of trying to get away, but the crowd following you, and Jesus still welcomes them. I feel like we say this often about Luke. This is a deep well. There's so many great themes in this story, so many places to go, so many things to see. Luke has done a really nice job bringing these together. But ultimately, and I suppose this makes sense, the idea that this is one of the most well-known miracles would be reasonable given that it involves the most number of people. So the scale of this miracle is certainly surprising, especially when you consider 5 loaves and 2 fish versus thousands of people. But again, Luke has shown us this before, and we continue to unpack it in various ways. With Jesus, even what seems to be a little ends up being more than enough, and Luke continues to spell that out for us.
I think that when reading the Gospels, Clint, it is easy to get lost in some of the stories that are familiar, and it's easy to miss in those stories the new lessons and teaching that is happening. We've seen Jesus already do some miraculous things. He's certainly healed the sick. He's casted out demons. He's calmed the storm. Here, as Jesus feeds the crowd, he's continuing to do the thing he's been doing all along, and that is to reveal who he is and what kind of kingdom he's bringing to bear. But what he's revealing in this miracle is that this kingdom is a radically different place than what we expected. It's not just bodies mended, nature stilled and controlled, but it is bodies fed, that people are miraculously provided for, that math itself, the idea that we only have this much, but it could be enough for everyone, is itself a reversal of the entire laws of the universe that we know and accept. And here Jesus is revealing a ability to be God that is really remarkable. We might miss, because of our familiarity with the story, the life rupturing kind of power that Jesus is displaying in a story like this. And when we see this story unfolding, we see that the disciples, they get it. It's their voice that I think helps us see it, because they make the point, unless we're going to go buy food for this entire crowd, they're not going to eat. That's a sensible adult kind of response to Jesus. But Jesus isn't coming into this conversation with a sensible dollars and cents type lesson. He's here to reveal that if you are but to trust in him, then all will eat, and not just eat, there will be more than enough. The number 12, of course, being a significant number in the history of Israel, the number of disciples, the tribes of Israel, all these kinds of things. Jesus is very clearly, in Luke's telling, not just doing a miraculous thing, but he's revealing something much deeper about who he is, about God's plan for the world, about this kingdom that Israel's been expecting, but now this very kingdom who Jesus is bringing to bear in a surprising way. And this is all happening in the midst of a story, which on its surface just seems like, well, lots of people ate and that's convenient. But really, this is a story about how this kingdom that Jesus is bringing and initiating and portraying is going to change everything, and no one anticipated it.
This is true. I don't want to oversell this idea, Michael, because I do think all of the Gospels are thoughtful, and all of the Gospel writers put significant intention into their work. But in Luke, words matter and order matters. Luke is perhaps the most thoughtful, and so I think you also have to be open to the idea that Luke is the most subtle. So what is the story that precedes this and that Luke connects it to? The apostles returned. Well, where had they been? Jesus had sent them out. And what did Jesus tell them? Don't take anything. You don't need anything. Your faith will be enough. People will respond. There will be hospitality. In other words, Jesus told them explicitly to go out into the world in simplicity and faith, and they would be fine. And now what happens? The people come to Jesus, and the disciples say, we don't have enough. They haven't quite learned their lesson. And Luke gives us a fascinating way to get there. Notice that in verse 10, he says, on their return, the apostles told Jesus. But then in verse 12, we say, as the day was drawing to a close, the 12 came to him and said, and Jesus says, feed them. And they say, we can't. And then, as you pointed out, Michael, 12 is a significant number in the scripture, but it's also a significant number in this passage. They pick up 12 baskets of leftovers. And when you connect the 12 disciples who doubt with the 12 baskets left over, the clear implication is there is a basket of bread and fish for every disciple who didn't understand what Jesus was saying and told him we don't have enough. Each one of those men gets a visible, physical reminder that there's more than enough in the economy of faith. If you take the world's economy, there's scarcity. But in the kingdom, there is enough. With Jesus, there is enough. And 12 matters here because I think it's a very specific and very intentional message that Luke leaves us with.
You know, there's an interesting little nugget here too, Clint, that I think we might miss if we don't just point it out. And that is that in some ways we miss the really reversals happening in a book like Luke if we don't understand a little bit of the geography. And I'm going to keep this really, really short. But if you're an Israelite, your life revolves around this city, Jerusalem, which you've heard that before in your experience in the church. But to make it to where we are today, you have to start there in Jerusalem, which is in the middle of this little red orange section here. And we go all the way up to the Sea of Galilee, here to the city of Bethsaida. And just look here. I'm going to scroll out here so that hopefully you can see this. Like, look at the distance between these places. You've got Jerusalem at the bottom of the screen there and Bethsaida top right side of the Sea of Galilee there. Clint, this is in the middle of nowhere. When Jesus is doing these ministries, he's not doing it at the center of the populace. He's not doing it at the center of the intelligentsia. He's not near the temple. He's not near the teachers of the law. He's not near the people who are the cosmopolitan city people. Jesus is doing this work in a remote region. He's feeding crowds, as the text said in Luke. Jesus goes to this place. It's a small place to be there privately. When Jesus goes, he's drawing large crowds from the countryside, and he is doing these miracles with these folks. That is not accidental. It's part of Luke's theme. It's part of the idea that Jesus didn't come to just be locking horns with the Titans in Jerusalem. Jesus came to bring good news to the people in the middle of nowhere. Jesus came to bring food for people who would have to travel to go buy it and hopefully get it. That all of this is playing into Luke's general message, which is that Jesus is good news for the lost, for the least, for the outcast, for the people on the fringes. So the story itself, its setting, is in some ways teaching the lesson that Luke has been portraying all along. And if we don't just pause to mention it, we might pass by it and not see it happening.
Yeah, I think this is at a lot of levels, this is just one of those texts that is really, there's a lot of depth here. You know, this is a fascinating text to preach, to study. I think from a devotional aspect, the idea of offering Jesus a little and asking him to make it enough to transform, the idea of service, that the disciples come back and Jesus essentially makes them waiters, that they, as they continue to learn what it means to work in the kingdom and to follow Jesus, they serve the crowd. They steward the crowd. You have them sit down in 50s. And that they then take the leftovers, which again, as I mentioned, are in and of themselves a message to those very men. And so just a wonderful text. I think, you know, it's not a coincidence, I think, that this is one of the few gospel miracles that is accounted for in each of the four gospels. It was well known. It was a story that was told. It's very telling. It's very indicative of who Jesus is and what it means to follow him. And so I think, you know, there's just a lot here for us, and I hope that there's something in it that might speak to you guys today.
It is important to recognize that the church has always found meaningful this idea of the loaves and the fish. And there's lots of commentators who spend lots of time inking some reasons why that might be the case. And certainly the idea that these were things that would have been available and food that might have been accessible, of course, but it's easy to pass by that as just a point in the story and not think about the additional symbolism that those things would have. The idea that Jesus is later going to take bread and break it and say, this is my body. And this would become an integral part, actually, of Christian worship. One of the things, by the way, that we might take for granted, but in the ancient world was one of the most frequent charges leveled against Christians, was that they believed in essentially eating Jesus, the idea that they were going to be people participating in this inhuman kind of act. So the idea that bread appears here has an interesting connection with communion, this idea that Jesus is revealing something through bread even before the Last Supper. And then, you might know that fish has become a substantial symbol of the Christian faith from the very earliest days as well. That there's the disciples who are chosen, who are fishermen, who become fishers of men. The idea that Jesus tells some stories that involve fish, that here now fish becomes another important image in Jesus multiplying what didn't seem to be enough for everyone. So, Clint, I just think Luke does this thing that we sometimes miss in our modern Bible study. He tells us a study. Well, we get fixated in our modern context to ask, well, did that really happen or not? Well, that's an interesting question maybe, but if that's what you get fixated on and you never move deeper into the story, you realize that there's layer upon layer upon layer of this story. There's Jesus feeding people miraculously. That might offend the modern sensibility. But then you move deeper and you see there's theological significance. Why bread? Why fish? Then you move deeper in that. You see, well, where is it? And what significance does that have? If you're willing to dig deeper into a text and to live in it a little bit, you're going to discover that all of these layers are built on top of each other. They all serve a purpose. They're all intended. And there's something that we can learn and be inspired by in the midst of it.
One of the ways I think we do that, Michael, is sometimes if we read a story, particularly parables, but even these miracle stories, and ask, who do I relate to in the story? And here I think your choices are, am I a person who's hungry and hoping to be fed? Am I a person who's dealing with scarcity, either mentally or physically, emotionally, or maybe monetarily? Am I worried about a lack in my life, and how do I look to Jesus to receive from him instead abundance? How do I offer him the places where I lack and allow him to fill me and to give me enough or more than enough? Or perhaps, am I a disciple? Am I a person who is somewhat close to Jesus and beginning to understand who he is? And am I called to serve? Am I called to look at the hungry and hear Jesus' words, you go feed them? Am I called to do something? Am I called to be the bearer of the bread, the fish, the body, the truth, the help, whatever that looks like? Who am I in the story? And if we can identify that, I think it maybe helps the story ring true for our own context in a way that is helpful.
We certainly hope that that is the case for you. We're glad that you would spend your time with us and hope that this study has been interesting for you, maybe inspired you to look even deeper in this story. We look forward to continuing on with an important declaration that will come early next week as we continue our study on Monday. Until then, be blessed. Certainly subscribe, like, and we will see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.